Going on, everybody? It's Chris with Life 180. I am here with Matt with Life 180. And we are here. We came to Houston, and we are here at this World Financial Group meeting. And we were invited here by actually a really, really wonderful lady who is, just kind of getting in this world of World Financial Group. And she invited me to come down, check it out, give an unbiased opinion. I responded to her and said, well, I don't know that I can give you an unbiased opinion, but I'll try to be as objective as possible because, at the end of the day, I don't think it's a secret that I have biases in this space. I'm not going to shy away from that. I'm not going to hide from that. The fact that I have biases about this business and the organization, the way it's run. However, I am also open to realizing hey, maybe I don't know everything, right? And I'm always wanting to learn. I'm always wanting to make sure that any of the information that I put out there is factual, accurate, is, everything. I don't care whether you're listening to me or whether you're listening to somebody else. Everything is going to have a slant to it with their own perspective, their own biases. And so my objective coming into this event was to just kind of be open-minded. See how they ran the event, see what the culture was like, see what the community was like, see just ultimately, I don't think it's a secret here that I have my issues with Index Universal Life, and we'll get into that and how that plays into this this experience to this point in time. But I did want to come in and just kind of have an open mind and open perspective on how they operate as a company and as a culture. And I know Matt, Matt's been working with me now for what, almost a year?
Yeah.
And he came from a very similar space to this, to this WFG. So he was kind of, as we were coming down here, he was prepping me, here's what you're gonna see, this is how it's gonna be. And I'm like, all right, we'll see how it goes. But so here's what I wanna do though. Before getting into the hot stuff, the stuff that I'm a little fired up about, I want to talk about some of the good stuff because there has been, we've basically got here yesterday, about 24 hours ago. So this is a full day in. We're stepping out, we're stepping aside because they're doing awards or something like that right now. But we're stepping aside to just kind of do this and kind of give a little reaction to what we've seen to this point in time. And so I guess I want to hear from you, what has been your feedback to this point in time?
Like you said, I've been in a similar company. It kind of stemmed from WFG, and there are a lot of positives. I'm not gonna lie. The community factor, the energy, the feeling, the emotions that you get. Everybody's friendly. Everybody is excited. Everybody's welcoming, and it's just you could tell they're celebrating people's accomplishments. They're celebrating that they all have a common goal to eventually run their own business in the insurance industry, and it's just a positive atmosphere, which that's kind of what I expected, and I think they did it well. As far as the energy and renting out the room and how they decorated it. The production was very, well. And what I noticed is there was a lot of veterans there, and they did invite a lot of people that are new,
veterans
thinking about
in the industry, not veterans of war.
Yeah, in the industry. Good clarification. Just in case people didn't know. But there's a lot of people that are thinking about getting into the business, and what's often done is they invite people so they can kind of feel the whole experience. And really the goal is after they experience the whole weekend, they say, you know what, I want to join this company. And so I've got a chance to meet a lot of people that this is their first time. They're kind of new to it. They're just kind of checking it out. And I'm sure, a lot of them will probably end up moving forward because there's nothing negative as far as they can see that presented itself. And they'll probably start their journey with World Financial Group. And that's how generally most people start in this type of company, for sure.
Okay, so it's interesting because I obviously I'm very critical of the product that World Financial Group uses because it's Index Universal Life. I'm very critical of Doug Andrew, who is the lead trainer, not lead trainer for WFG, but they obviously go to him a lot, and I think they set up to become part of his training programs, and he becomes kind of effectively one of their leaders, even though kind of de facto, right?
Yeah.
Fair enough. So, and he's here, he's talking, like, whatever. Doug, if you're watching this or anyone wants to talk to Doug, and Doug, you want to debate me while I'm here live with you, let's do it. But here's my take on what's been, like, I've seen stuff on taxes. They had David Walker, the former Comptroller General of the United States, talking about taxes and the future of taxation. I think a lot of their identification of the problems in this country are really accurate. I think a lot of the challenges, that people are here. I mean, they've got 700 people-ish in the room, which is a big room, and that doesn't happen by accident, right? Like, so I have to, all the things, that I can be critical about the compensation plan and about the product. Those are the two things that I would be most critical about, if anything. But the rest of it, like what they're doing here and the leadership and the camaraderie and the community and all these different things, like they're doing some stuff really, really well.
Yeah.
And so I know it's probably shocking a lot of people that I'm saying positive things about WFG, but like experiencing it, I gotta say the person who invited me here has been wildly open. The people who are leading this event specifically, I can't speak to all WFG, and I guarantee you there are other teams that I would not have this positive feedback for, but at least the team that's here, that we're dealing with right now, they've been open and they've been willing to have conversations, and I fully anticipate having conversations with them. Don't expect much to come out of those conversations, but at least they're open. They didn't shun us. They didn't it wound up, they all knew I was coming. Like I could tell they knew I was coming because they were like, oh, you got to go talk to this guy. Like, and they were prepped for me. But like, it was cool because they were open. Like they didn't stiff arm me. They didn't, they were all like open to have a conversation. And to me, I think that's all that really matters. Like if we can have real good quality open conversations around education, I think eventually, my belief is eventually when people learn how this stuff really works and they see it in action and actually enforce, as we would use in the industry, that's when the rubber's going to hit the road. Because I do believe everybody in this business, they get into this business, and I guess that's the overall energy that I got out of the building, out of the room, was people are here because they want to help people, and I believe that, right? Like, and it's hard for me to be really critical of people coming in and selling a product that I know is kind of a fraud. Right. It's hard for me to be critical of the people, even the leaders, because listen, I went through that process. I remember listening to a talk. It wasn't Doug Andrew, but it was Patrick Kelly back in the day. If anybody knows Patrick, you know Patrick Kelly? Yeah. Yeah. So Patrick Kelly did a talk back in the day, and I remember watching his talk. And it was all his tax-free retirement book. And I remember watching that talk, and it was very similar to Doug Andrews' talk. In fact, I'm sure Doug Andrew got a lot of his talk from Patrick Kelly's talk because it was that similar. But I remember watching that talk and being in a room much smaller than this because it was a smaller environment, but very, very similar in the reasoning for everybody being there. And then coming out of that conversation or coming out of that presentation, like totally sold on IUL, right? I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I became an agent. I sold a lot of it. I became a manager, became a director of business development. I grew through the ranks. And I did it for 4.5 years, and I did a lot of it. And so it's easy for me to be critical of the product. And I think a lot of times people misconstrue my criticism of the product as criticism of the people. Right. And I think that's one thing that this day, 24 hours in, has shown me is that sometimes maybe I get misinterpreted and that I make it seem like I'm more critical of the people than I am the product. But it is in fact the product that I'm critical of. I give everybody an open chance out of the gate because I made the mistakes. I didn't know what I didn't know. And when I learned about IUL, what I learned about it, that's what forced me to take this pivot. I think a lot of people that are in WFG, PHP, PFA, other IUL agents that are critical of me, especially people on Instagram. I don't know what it is about Instagram, but like Instagram and TikTok, like there's all these IUL guys that just think they know everything and they know nothing. Like they just don't know what they don't know. I don't mean they know nothing. They just don't know what they don't know about IUL. But they listen to people like Doug Andrew and they follow his training and they take it as gospel. And it's challenging for me because like certain people, when you find out the truth, then yeah, you got to be held accountable. You're going to have tough decisions to make. We were talking about it. One of the leaders came up and was like, "Hey, I'm excited to talk to you. I'm excited to like hear what you have to say about this because maybe you know something I don't know." Now, I don't know if he was placating me, right? And just trying to be chill, which I kind of think was happening. But like Matt and I were talking after, and it's just like, should we really expect anything to happen there? Because you said it, like at some point in time, like when you see the facts, like the real facts, and I'm gonna go through some of the points in Doug Andrews' talk. I got 5 points that as he was talking, I was kind of taking notations, and I'm gonna go through those, and I'm gonna make comments. Like I'm gonna go through and just basically point out kind of I'm gonna say fraudulent kind of components to it. You know what I mean? That to me are just super misleading. But if you don't know what you don't know, they're super impactful from a sales perspective. I will say this, what I've learned, and you keep pointing it out to me, you go, see what they're doing, right? See what they're doing, I know what they're doing. And they're the best, they're like the best at pre-framing stuff. They're masterful at the sales process of pre-framing. And honestly, I could probably get better at that. Because I don't really do a whole lot of sales elements. I'm just like, bang, this is just what it is. Like, do what you need to do. This is the way this stuff works. I don't believe in trying to pre-frame it because I don't want to manipulate people, And it's interesting, even as I'm debating on Instagram with some of these World Financial Group people, not on this team, they're actually in other teams. And that's one thing I think I've learned in this too, is not all WFG teams are even the same, right? And I knew that was the case, but I didn't realize how vast of a difference that was, right?
Oh yeah.
Which is huge. So that's interesting. But what I realized in watching the pre-framing here and just the framing in general of like setting and programming your emotion and your mindset and the commitment and the buy-in to the family and all these different things, which is beautiful in a lot of ways, but it's also dangerous in certain ways, right? But in noticing that, what I've noticed is that it's systemic. It goes across the board, and they do it in all these areas, and they become masters at like doing this framing in all these different areas. Even the people that I'm battling with on Instagram comments right now, the way that they respond in their comments is like they do this framing that's like massively manipulative. And then they try to put it like I'm the manipulative one, right? And so they like try to frame as it's kind of like if you're guilty at doing something, yet you beat somebody to the punch and you go like, rat on them to like the police, like all of a sudden if you're the one who did it, but you sold somebody else out, it's like all of a sudden you're like somehow not a suspect, right? Like that's kind of the stuff that's happening. Is that fair?
Oh yeah, they're good at it. I mean, just coming up in a similar background, just sitting there, we sat in the front row.
Oh,
and
I got dragged in the front row.
The
second
speeches,
row.
Yeah, the speeches and the training, it's so crazy because I work myself up at such a high level. Like I was the CEO's right-hand man. And, being the CEO's right-hand man, I got, some inside baseball. I got a chance to understand the framing, how to actually sell agents. And what a lot of people don't understand, this was to sell agents. It's just a sell after sell after sell through stories, emotion, selling value, selling credibility, selling belief. And you're just selling all day from beginning to end to agents. And then I think really the problem is it's like the selling part in believing in yourself, doing bigger, better things with your life, improving. I think I'm all for that. But it's like all of this energy that you're selling these agents to do something, they're selling IUL.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
And that's my problem. So like when it comes down to it, there's 2 things that I think, I'm gonna hold tight to, no matter what. Like I can't say no matter what, because I guess they could change, right? But 2 things that I think are absolutely problematic in the system here that I've realized and that I knew before, a couple of them, but that have really opened my eyes up. And the first thing is when you're with WFG, you own your business maybe because like, okay, I could join WFG, I could start an LLC, I can have my commissions get paid to my LLC, I'm in business for myself, but not by myself. That's the all phrase that they use. I think they use that. Do they use that? Like that's
Yeah,
kind of a common phrase in this kind of space, right? So, it is what it is. But the thing is, you may own your business, but you don't own your renewals, right? And there's a big difference between owning your business and owning your renewals, because at the end of the day, your renewals are your cash flow as a life insurance agent. And so I knew that was the way it happened, and that's one of the reasons I designed the Life 180 agreements and compensation plan the way that I did, to make it so people are vested from day one. People, like when they work with Life 180, I don't pay them. Like, they don't have to assign their commissions to us, and then we pay them. They get paid directly by the company. So there's a direct leverage, and they get the renewals from day one, and even if they leave us, they have their renewals, and like I'm not their boss, really. I don't control them. They're basically independent, right? And so, like, to me, that's a huge difference. The idea that people start off at a 25% commission rate, I got news for you. There's not even a 25% commission rate level at any of these carriers. So this is something that only because you assign all your commissions to them are they able to pay you so little, right? So to me, that's a massive, massive problem. Like, that's a wildly crazy, massive problem. And so, like, I was looking at the comp plan earlier. It's like the marketing director gets paid 62%.
Yeah.
And that's like, from what I've been hearing, and I don't know much about this stuff, so I'll like, as far as like the details of like the levels of the comp plan, but from what I gather, the marketing director is a pretty darn successful level.
Yeah, it's definitely a first level leadership.
Okay.
But if you look further in the compensation, whatever it is, 62% or whatever it is right now, it's only for Transamerica products. Outside of that, the comp can actually be lower, because they want to push Transamerica, because obviously that's the parent. So
okay, well, that's good to know. So all right. So if anybody has any questions or wants to chime in, ask anything about the experience so far, go ahead and feel free to do that. I'm gonna try to I'm doing this on my mobile too. I'm not used to doing this, so. It looks like I have it set so all messages are visible, so we should be good to go. But thank you, anybody here, if you're enjoying this, please like the video, share the video out, comment, let us know what questions you have, because we're going to be here. I'm hoping to interview some people. I really want to get some feedback, and honestly, I'm trying to come into this as objective as I possibly can, right? Like that, because this is, and I'm going to fully acknowledge I'm not a WFG guy. No. So James asked, are you a WFG guy? No, I'm not a WFG guy. I was invited to this WFG conference because I'm so critical of WFG. And I have a problem with a lot of what they do. But somebody asked me to come and vet it with them. And so I came to one of their events. And I brought Matt, who is the director of business development, or director of agent development for Life 180. And I was like, all right, so we got to go. Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm anything but a WFG agent. I will say this, is that I came in to evaluate and assess and kind of get an idea of like what they do. As critical as I am of WFG, I got to give them credit on, you don't build an agency of 700 people by accident, right? So I'm trying to come through this weekend as critical as I am of the products and the comp plan and all that stuff. As critical as I am about that, I'm also trying to say, hey, what can I learn from this? Like, they do some great things. They do some stuff on leadership that is awesome. They, their community building and mentorship and all that stuff, even if it's like, I'll say this, it's great. The problem is the direction that they bring people. Like, the solution is the problem. And so you can have the best intentions of the world, but like, if you're selling people, poison, are you really helping people? So tip the scale on the bad side with some good. Yeah, and that's exactly it, right? And so we're just here and we're evaluating this and we're seeing how how it all plays out. But it's been an interesting day. This is I started the video. If anybody's just joining now, we're 24 hours in, actually almost exactly now. We watched Doug Andrew talk last night. I felt like the world was going to tilt on its axis. I was standing like 20 feet from Doug Andrew, and I'm like, I might explode right now. But I watched Doug do his presentation, and I got to tell you, my hands were like over my head the whole time like this, because I was about to I didn't know what I was going to do. It was so hard to control myself. and not get up on stage and like call them out. But I controlled myself. Even I had people like who knew like kind of my position. Everybody kept looking at me. I felt like all eyes were on me because everybody knew I was there, like in this group in this little corner that I was sitting in.
Out.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And so I made eye contact with Doug too before he went up. So he knew I was in the room, I think. I don't know for a fact, but I think he knew I was in the room. And in the middle, so this is interesting. So this is where I want to start on the problem with I'm talking about exactly. Thank you, Lauren. You know, like Lauren Odell. Yeah, he wants truth, not hyper fraud. I love that. You know, and I think a lot of people here are looking for the same thing. They just don't know. They don't know what they don't know, right? And Lauren, if you're looking for a home, I saw in Utah. Hit me up, chris@life180.com. I'm in Utah all the time, and we can talk next time I go up there if you want. We can connect. But here's the interesting part. So Doug, I swear, Doug saw me, and it was interesting because I cannot imagine this is part of Doug's presentation all the time. But he started going down this path. It was about 30 minutes in the presentation, where he was like, you know, it's tough to be at the top. All these whole life agents, they just attack you because, you know, when you're at the top, they're just shooting arrows in my back, you know, and it's easier rather than to tear people down, it's easier to like focus on selling your thing than tearing people down. It's easier to just, you know, focus on the thing that you do and be the best at you do and serve the people that you're looking to serve. And so, like, I get that, I do. And I think if you, like, I think a lot of the content that I do, you know, I filmed 1,100, 12, actually it's 1,300 videos now on the YouTube channel here, right? And out of the 1,300 videos, I think 120 of them are on IUL, 4 of them are on Doug, 5 of them are on Doug Andrew out of the 1,300 videos, but somehow the perspective is all the content you do is on Doug Andrew. And I'm like, maybe that's what you saw, so that's just your perspective, but you know, 1,300 videos, I don't know what percentage 5 is of 1,300, but it's a very low percentage, guys. And so I don't focus a lot on that. But what I found interesting is he was on stage proclaiming that, you know, he was a victim of all these bad whole life agents trying to tear him down, and that was somehow unethical, and that he was a victim. Yet, the first part of his presentation was all about how IUL knocked the socks off whole life and dwarfed whole life. Garrett Gunderson loves this, like the way Doug talks, like, hello, what's up, Philip? So like it's the interesting part about this is he speaks out of both sides of his mouth. He's allowed to tear down whole life to talk about how IUL is better through half-truths and lies, right? Yet when people like me who understand the truth come at it, right? When people like me and Garrett come at it and like speak the truth about what's what and hold Doug to the table, all of a sudden, and this is the brilliance of their pre-framing, right? Like, because he gets up on stage, and this is what I realized yesterday, I didn't realize it, how bad it was, how bad it was, and why I get so many negative comments on all my IUL videos about these like concepts, is Doug pre-frames it when people are in these environments and they're learning about it, and he basically tells them, listen, this is the amazing thing, look what I just showed you. By the way, there's gonna be these whole life agents that just tear me down. Mm-hmm. And he, like, when you see that, just know that they're lying. Patrick from Paradigm Life is amazing too. But he goes, like, just know that they're lying. That's what Doug does. He pre-frames this. So now when they see my content, as true as it is, as accurate and as factual as the information that I give is, somehow I'm positioned as the fraud because Doug pre-framed it. And it's like, I had this awakening last night and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, this is completely insane that this is the way it's all going down. And he's so good at, you know, at pre-framing. Lauren, we're trying to save people from Doug. That's what we're trying to do, right? So it's interesting to me that how he can make content about whole life that's defamatory and not accurate and full of half-truths and lies, and somehow that's okay. But when I make content about him, it's like we're just tearing down the biggest man on the hill, according to his words, or the biggest building in town. I think that's an analogy he used. When you're the biggest building in town, you know, like whatever, So that's that. So I don't know how everybody else feels about that, but that really like spoke to me. Probably because I'm probably the number one Doug Andrew detractor online. And he obviously is not a fan of mine. And if he knew I was there, he was gonna, whatever.
But
Go ahead.
I think too, when you see all the framing and stuff like that, everything they're doing, you can start to see why a lot of agents who sell IULs, I mean, they haven't even sold it for that long.
Yep.
I sold it for 8 years,
Yep.
And I was kind of brainwashed, and so you woke me up.
Yep.
And then just seeing these agents, you can see how they don't want to let it go, and they think we're wrong. Right? Because when all this pre-framing with Doug and all this thing, they're like, "There's no way I'm wrong about IULs."
And it's an
You're
emotional,
wrong.
it's an emotional bias, right? Like you get it's confirmation bias, right? Because if Matt just got to this event and never knew anything, and he watched Doug Andrew talk, and he makes the emotional buy-in, and then he follows their system, and he goes and he sells all his family and friends and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Matt needs to be right.
Yes.
Right.
100%.
So when Matt comes across my YouTube channel for the first time, and this kind of happened, by the way. This did happen, right? So when Matt comes across my channel for the first time, and he's like, "Whoa, no, there's no way that could be right. And because he's gonna hold on to his truth."
I didn't like you for like a couple of weeks until it just kind of ate me up.
You didn't tell me that part.
Yeah, well, a couple of weeks. It was like, who is this guy? He's going against what I believe in. IUL is the best of the best. And then, I just start binge watching, and I said, I could be wrong, and if I am, I have to find out now.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Well, and that's the hard part, right? And so the challenge that I have is the biggest challenge that I have is that anybody following Doug, right? You could disagree with him. You could look at the math. I could show you facts. I could show you common sense, and we can get through to the bottom line of this IUL fraud as a whole, right? And like how they're used and why insurance companies use IUL and all these different things instead of whole life. We can do all that. But at the end of the day, Doug Andrew is not licensed. Doug Andrew has been involved in multiple lawsuits. Doug Andrew, go Google Doug Andrew lawsuit, right? And when you do that, what you're gonna find is pages worth of problems, pages worth of complaints and articles and all this stuff. The challenge that I have with Doug Andrew and why I'm so vehemently attacking him is because I just think it's a tragedy that he is the number one IUL trainer in the country and people follow him blindly, yet nobody's done their due diligence on, they think because he's on a stage like this and because, people get on stage, I'm not gonna call out names of people that were talking because I promised full integrity that I wouldn't throw names under the bus. But you get people, on video and they talk about how much they love their wife and how dedicated they are and how much they love God and how committed they are and basically what good people they are, right? And so, they do that and then other people do like similar things. And so they, once again, pre-frame all these things. So now when the people are in here and then they see Doug and Doug by association with these other people, which I'm sure are great people with good intentions, right? For the most part, they see that and they go, well, these people are such good people, they would never defraud anybody. And Doug, by default of association, which is a total Tony Robbins thing, right? Like that associative, relational confidence, right? Or like credibility is the word I'm looking for. It's like he has it through these relationships, and so then he gets up and talks, and so then when people they don't even do their due diligence on the guy because it's just like, oh, he must be a good guy. He must be an upstanding guy. And he says a lot of the right things. I don't judge a person by what they say. I judge a person by what they do. And when you look at what they do, what was it, Thoreau or something like that said, I can't hear what you say for what you do speaks so loud, right? One America did a study on IUL. They found it's a smoking mirrors. Yep, I'll get a copy of the white paper. I actually have the white paper on that. Yeah, so Clay Summers over at One America is amazing. I love that guy because he's like as anti-IUL as it gets. He's right in our camp. I love talking to Clay about that stuff. So that was the first point that stuck out to me is that Doug commented on how whole life agents attack him and tear him down and how he's a victim and everybody's after him, and he tried to position himself like he's the biggest building in town, and yet he said it's horrible, people shouldn't do that, yet he's built his whole business on tearing down whole life by lying about how positive IUL is. So does anybody, give me a 1 if you think that's like wildly hypocritical, and give me a 2 if you think, well, you still don't understand it. Like, because I just, like, to me, that's a big thing. Now, I got another point. All right, so now I'm gonna go through, I got 4 more points, 4 like technical points, because that was kind of an emotional thing for me, which I guess is kind of technical still too, but like it just really chafed me the wrong way. So the first point that Doug talked about, and I'm going through kind of sequential order, timestamping his presentation. I recorded the audio. It was a really rough recording of the audio, but I listened to it again, and I kind of listened to the points, after the fact, kind of coinciding with my notes a little bit. But first point he said was I'm going to read my notes a little bit here. Doug talks about how banks are using IUL and using indexing to create greater returns. And I'm going to tell you, nothing could be further from the truth. Banks do utilize whole life insurance. Banks utilize life insurance as key person insurance. They use it. It's called bank-owned life insurance. Life insurance companies have been utilizing life insurance as a tier 1 financial asset on the balance sheet of the banks. If you don't know what a tier 1 asset is, it's basically the reserves, the capital reserves of the bank. They can utilize cash, gold, and life insurance, cash value. Think about that. So the fact that they can use life insurance cash value should say a lot about the stability. If the banks are utilizing the cash value and life insurance as a tier 1 asset, one of the things, I think it was Bank of America, I did a study with, I didn't do the study, I gotta say that carefully. Barry Dyke did a study in his book, and I was talking to Barry about the study, and it was something like Bank of America, it's like 20% of their liquid capital reserves are sitting inside whole life insurance. That's a big number, right? That's a big number, guys, right? When you consider all the assets that Bank of America has. And so when we look at this, it's important to understand, like I look at it this way and I go, all right, all these people that claim that IUL is being utilized by banks, no, IUL agents are bastardizing the success that whole life has had for 180 years. That's what's happening. They're taking the success and they're bastardizing it and turning it into something that isn't even factual, right? Pre-framing creates that bias before the presenter gives, hungry audience, unless, of course, they're vegans. Nice. I like that. But like, here's the thing about bank-owned life insurance, and I'm going to talk about this really quickly because I don't want to just be like, oh, he's wrong. I want to go back in history and let's talk about why banks utilize life insurance in the first place, because it's not arguable. Banks use life insurance. I did a video the other day talking about Dave Ramsey, who did a call with a caller that came and was talking about infinite banking, and the guy did a horrible job positioning infinite banking, and Dave Ramsey tore him apart. But the part of the video that was interesting to me is Dave Ramsey was like, the guy made a comment like, well, banks utilize whole life insurance as a tier 1 asset. Dave Ramsey straight up goes, are you an idiot? Like, banks are not stupid enough to utilize whole life insurance and to own cash value life insurance. And it's really interesting. So I was like, I went online and I did a review on this video. I'll link it later on this video if you're watching the replay. It's really fascinating, but I went through and I did this. There's over 3,000 banks in this country that have significant assets inside of whole life insurance, or inside of life insurance. Fairness, they don't delineate between the two. They don't delineate and say, all right, here's how much whole life, here's how much universal life, index universal life. They don't delineate. But just know, historically speaking, and the way that this works and the purpose of life insurance is to utilize it as a tier 1 asset. Now think about it this way. This is, once we reverse engineer this and we use some common sense, banks offer something called cash value line of credit or life insurance line of credit, a cash backed line of credit inside of the cash value, utilizing the net cash value of the policy. What you can do is, rather than take a policy loan, you can assign the cash value to a bank and they will give you a line of credit. It's just an easier way because banks transact much faster than a life insurance rather than using the policy loan provision. In addition, back when interest rates were lower with the bank, you could, pay a bank 2.5% on the line of credit. Meanwhile, you could earn the 4.5% net after, all things said, the net dividend that would get paid out. It's not the 6% gross that everybody thinks. But you could actually have arbitrage, right? In the policy, and it was a beautiful thing. Now those lines of credit are 8, 9, 9.5, 10%. So it makes no sense to have it, but it shows the value and the power of that. Now here's the deal. With a cash value line of credit, a bank will lend you on a whole life policy up to 100% of the net cash value in your policy. There are some banks that offer cash value lines of credit on IUL. They'll only lend you up to 70% max. Most companies are 50%. I found one company that will lend you up to 70% of the net cash value in your policy. Why is that? It's because the banks know that life insurance cash value in an IUL is not nearly stable enough, and that the cost and all the erosion potential and all the moving parts in it could potentially come unwound. And so if they know that for you to the point where they're not going to give you the same loan provisions, why would they be putting their own money in an IUL? If it was that good, they'd be doing it for themselves, people. Like, if we just use common sense, right? Brendan Burchard always says, common sense is very seldom common practice. We got to get out of the illustrations and all the technicals, right? Oh, thanks, JJ. Appreciate that. We got to get out of the illustrations and just back out of this and think commonsensically about the people that are actually using this. Now, when we go to the BOLI conversation about this, I think it's important to realize why do banks even use BOLI in the first place? Well, we got to go all the way back to 1913, the institution of the Federal Reserve, and we got to realize when the banking institutions that we use and know today, so hold on, one IUL versus whole life cannot be solved mathematically. IUL versus whole life can be solved mathematically. The problem is it can't be done on an illustration because IUL illustrations are smoke and mirrors. They're not even accurate. And so we can talk about the math of it. I can't do it here. I don't have my whiteboard. I've got a lot of videos where I go through the math of IUL and how it actually works. You can absolutely, we can talk about that and how it works. And I think when you understand the flow of money in an IUL, how it actually works, how the returns are actually generated, where the risks are, what the long-term real potential is of them, and we compare that to a whole life, we can absolutely do the math behind it. I can't do it on this forum right now. I've got a playlist of 100 videos that will, some of the videos break it down. But the point is, it's not even about the math. It's about if IUL could do all the things for you that the agent is selling you that it can do, then all of these other things, if we use common sense, getting away from the math. If, for instance, well, let me finish this and I'm going to get there because that's actually one of the questions. I'll circle back to that statement, okay? But when we go back to 1913, when the institution of the Federal Reserve and all the banking institutions that we use them today basically were formulated and created, we have to think about why do banks utilize whole life insurance? It's because all the banking cartel leaders at that point in time were before banks as we know existed, they were keeping their money in whole life insurance. And so when they launched this new banking system for Main Street America to put their money in, what happened is they left their money in whole life, right? The leaders, and so they had to keep all these tax rules in place to keep their money in whole life. And the craziest part was, as we went through, and it's funny, Doug Andrew likes to talk about all the IRS or the tax code and TAMRA, TEFRA, DEFRA, all this stuff, and he does that until he's blue in the face, and that is what it is. But he talks about that and how 1982 and 1984, all these things kind of happened, and that's those things did happen, but it wasn't because just of UL and IUL and to protect. It was because of the fact that that people were starting to realize because of the way that they had to take over their own investments and the way that they were saving their own money because the pension system was going away and the new IRA system and the 401k system and all that was starting to get created. People were starting to open their eyes and they were looking for solutions, and they didn't realize that whole life insurance was a place that people had been saving in traditionally for for like since 1913. And if you look at the results, I did a video maybe 3 weeks ago talking about the decline in the culture of America and the lack of savings. Like we can go back to, I think it was 1963 that I looked at the numbers, and there was half the population in 1963, but they had more life insurance in force in 1963 than they have today. And that doesn't count for inflation or anything. That's just nominal numbers, right? Like it's mind-blowing. I've been in the business for 15 years. I've never sold an IUL. Good for you. I've never met an IUL owner where it's worked out for them. Lauren, that's so accurate, man. I never have either. Yet all these people. So here's the deal. This is the thing. So I'm battling with this guy on Instagram right now. His name is Wolf. God, what a clown this guy is. Wolfie. And he tries to say I'm a fraud. It's amazing, like the pre-framing these guys do. But here's the deal. This guy is talking about how IULs are the solution to everything, right? The interesting part about everybody selling this stuff is they've been doing the business for 5 or less years almost all the time. They've seen it work in this little vacuum, right? Because it's been okay because of the bull run. They don't see what it looks like long term and what it actually performs at long term. And the reality is there's never been one person alive, not that I haven't seen, right? It's not just that I haven't seen it, it has not happened. There's not been one person that's funded a policy for 20 plus years, or let's call it 15 years, like out of surrender period for a company like Transamerica or Mutual of Omaha, the 15-year surrender periods, and then used it for tax-free income and retirement for 10 or 15 years plus and done it successfully, right? It hasn't happened because they haven't been around long enough. And so to that point, like the problem with IUL isn't even the accumulation time, because that can have problems, sure, but the big problem is on the distribution phase of the IUL. And when that happens, and they blow up, that's when the taxable consequences happen. That's when people are going to really start to realize, like when IULs hit the range, when all the people who bought them when they were 45 and 50 start using them at 65 and 70, 20 years after the fact, and they became popular, don't forget, in 2009. We're going to see, in the next couple of years, we're going to start to see things unwind. And there's a reason. Listen, I'm passionate about this. Don't get me wrong. Like, I love doing this, and I believe everybody needs to know what I know, and that's why I do it. But I'm also like, I triple down on this because I know that all the people who are doing IUL and selling it and whatever are going to need help after the fact. And I just know, I don't know. There's a part of me that just wants to be the guy that calls it, if I'm being real, because I can see it so plainly that it's happening, and it's so obvious to me that why it's happening. But the bottom line, going back to the first point, and this is getting a long video here, but the first point is banks use whole life insurance. They've been using it since 1913 because the people that started the bank, Chris did a video breaking down the math and the fees in an IUL. It's titled Rich Man's Roth. So there you go. See, I do all these videos. I don't even know I do. I do so many videos. I can't even remember what I'm doing these days. Thank you for that, though. Thanks for sharing that. That's awesome. Very helpful. So like the thing is that the whole life companies have been the place that these banks have been utilizing. And so that's just what they've been doing. All these IUL companies now are coming out being like, oh, life insurance companies utilize, or banks utilize IUL. No, they don't. They use whole life. When you are a policyholder with a mutual company, you are a business partner. You share in the profitability of the most stable financial institutions on the face of the earth. When you own an IUL, so this is why banks wouldn't do this, you are a profit center for the whole life. Why would a bank say, you know what I want to do? I want to be a profit center for the life insurance company. That makes no sense. That makes no sense. That's why they don't do it, right? So we got to really think about that. I think that's an important thing. So this is probably the most egregious. All right, point number 2, okay? He's laughing, he sees my notes. This is insane, guys. I literally watched Doug get on stage and tell people that he could double their money in the first 7.5 years in their IUL. Double their money. So I know Transamerica, he's speaking to a bunch of Transamerica agents, and sure, I know Doug sells Pac Life, and I know he does a lot of Pac Life. I don't know what other, I know he was involved in a big lawsuit with F&G at one point in time. I know,
Allianz.
Yeah, Allianz, I'm sure, like whatever. I guess it doesn't matter. because there's no company with an IUL that you could double the money that you put into it, in a 7.5 year period. The crazy part, so what he did though, and this is his presentation, this is like what he's doing to teach agents to teach, is he goes out there and he says, the rule of 72? Yes. Well, my clients get 10%-ish in their IULs long term. So if you use the rule of 72 and you understand how that works, you divide 72 by 10 and that's 7.2 years. So every 7.5 years, the money that we put in that policy is gonna double. So I'm able to double your money in 7.5 years inside of an IUL. The problem is he's not taking into account the cost of insurance, the admin fees, he's not taking into consideration the surrender charges or anything like this. And so it's straight up fraud that he's on stage talking to 700 people that don't know what they're doing, that are gonna be out there replicating, duplicating, selling this way, and basically scamming all the people that they love and care about. And not even knowing it, they're gonna believe they're doing the right thing because they're just following the system and following the clues of success. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's exactly word for word. Success leaves clues.
Oh man, it's so frustrating. Okay, good hearts. A lot of these people here, once again, good hearts, but that part to me in the WFG culture, success leaves clues. Yeah, success. I don't care. That's the one thing that I've seen, getting away from Doug for a second, on the just the talks and all the talk about making money, right? When you're in this business, if you're focused on you making money, get the hell out. Go do something else. You will make money if you do it the right way and you serve people in the right way and you add enough value into people's lives, you'll make enough money. Let money be the scoreboard. Don't focus on money as the action and the goal and the objective. The problem is they did so much talking about override, isn't override check. Oh my gosh.
He had a stack of this that showed how much override he had. Remember that?
Philip, I had to sit there for 4 hours yesterday and just listen to this. It was I was exhausted. I'm not gonna lie. I had to go have a couple drinks after. I was I gotta have a bourbon and a margarita. That's what I needed after that. I didn't need it, but I certainly took it. But yeah, 4.5 hours of that crap yesterday. So that's that. 7.5 years, he's claiming people could double their money. No, that's not how it works, Dougie. I'm sorry. Point number 3. I'm gonna try to rip through these because this is going long. I wanna keep it under an hour here. Point number 3. He says using the level death benefit reduces the net amount at risk, keeping costs low. So this is oh yeah, I didn't even go here. So yesterday on this, he said his target market is 60 to 75-year-olds because they have more money. He straight up said it. 60 to 75-year-olds because they have more money and he likes to take big chunks of money from people. That's he said it. That's what he said. I mean, what? Here's the deal. If you sell an IUL to somebody in their 60s or 65 to, he even said up to 75 years old.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're selling to people in the years that they're gonna need to access this money, and you're putting them in a product that's gonna have a big ass surrender charge during the period of time that you're gonna need to access it. If you can get ahead in an IUL, if you could even be even in an IUL 7 years out to 8 years out, that's lucky. That's a really, really efficient, policy. But the fact that you have all these surrender charges and everything beyond that, and then you take into account the extra risk that's added into the policy with loans, when you do index loans, it's just atrocious. And the crazy part is they're selling them, showing indexing loans, but then he's gonna talk about, well, you could just use a wash loan. Well, illustrate it with a wash loan, you're gonna see that the income that you could get is about 30% of what you thought. If it showed you $100,000 a year of income and you with an index loan, and then you show it with a wash loan, it's gonna show about $30,000 a year of income. Right? And so when you look at that, it's man, nobody would buy it if you were just selling it in a pure way, right? People, it's all these different levers that you can kind of move, and they go, well, it's okay if you don't want the indexing loan, just move it to the wash loan, and it's fine. And you take all the risk off the table. No, you don't, because if you use a wash loan, then you don't eat into the net amount at risk potentially, right? You don't. And so therefore, as you get older, the net amount at risk stays the same, but your cost of insurance per $1,000 goes up. And as you get 75 to 80, those costs, even on only $100,000 of insurance, get catastrophic. Like it's really ugly, like $50,000 a year on $100,000 of insurance when you're like 85 years old. It's crazy, right? And so like when you look at that, you just realize, oh, like that's not it. A lot of times they'll say, oh, well, you know, IUL is like whole life. It's better than whole life because you can use the index, but then you can shoot to fixed strategies, you know, the fixed crediting strategy, you know, on years that you want to. In those later years, your return, you'd be lucky to yeah, 100%, JJ, 100%. It's craziness, you know, but people buy into this stuff. People buy into it. In my experience, World Financial Group is all about making money and earning rings and awards. Yeah, I'm noticing some of that. I don't think people are getting into it for that, though. I think a lot of the people that stay are attracted to that. And listen, everybody wants to be recognized. I have no problem with that, right? Like if you do a good job, if you serve a lot of people, I think you should be recognized. And I think there's value there. And I think, you know, there's an element of people needing that, right? And desiring that. There's nothing wrong with that. Recognize people for different things, maybe, right? Not just like how much money did you make and whatever. You know, how many people did you recruit? Like I saw so many people walk across the stage that have never made a dime, you know, just for recruiting people.
Yeah, no money.
It's insane. Like before people even like earn a check, right? Before people even make a check, like they're recruiting people so they can get a raise. It's like, it's nuts. So that the whole net amount at risk thing is to me a big smoke and mirrors thing. I've done videos on this. It's hard for me to go into detail on this content because it's a very mathematical thing, and I usually would do it at home on my smart board, and I would go through this all. But like it's one of those things, man, where you know you gotta look deeper. I had somebody, the person who invited me here, asked me. She goes, "Hey, what are 5 questions that I could ask about IUL to my upline?" And I'm like, listen, that's not really the right question for me because I could give you 5 questions to ask, but any skilled IUL agent could sidestep 5 questions and answer them and get away with them and convince you if you don't have the right context of the questions, right? And so like, it's beyond you gotta get beyond the question and get into the context of how they work and like, you know, you gotta get deeper. You gotta get so deep into these things, you know, that you almost need to understand how they work before you can even articulate the question. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so like it's crazy because like it's the loans when you get like the net amount at risk if you utilize in retirement. He says you use a level death benefit. And guess what? If you want to use an IUL for a level death benefit and you want to overfund the crap out of it and you want that to be a legacy plan and you never plan on using it for income, it can actually work, okay? As soon as you start to utilize that money for income in retirement, the wheels fall off because you inject so much risk because now you're taking indexing loans and now you have the cost of insurance that goes up. And then on years which 35% of the time, where the index performs less than the cost of borrowing, you inject more fees and more charges. And over time, the compounding of those fees and charges on top of the cost of insurance and admin fees and all these things in the policy during those negative years as you get older, which when you're taking retirement income, you're older, so the cost of insurance is higher, so there's more stress on the policy. You can never pay up an IUL like you can pay up a whole life and actually eliminate all the insurance charges at that point in time. That's where taking income from a whole life policy in retirement as a volatility buffer, I would still say never rely on income every single year from a whole life policy or a life insurance policy in general. It's kind of a rule of thumb that I have, but I would say the reason I love whole life as a volatility buffer in retirement is because if you do it and structure it the right way, you've already got it paid up. So yeah, you're gonna have interest expenses that can go in there, but you don't have to have the insurance cost on top of that. That's already paid up, right? With IUL, you have the cost of insurance and the interest expense on negative years. He's going to show like, oh, you can eat into the net amount at risk and shrink it, because on the illustration, it's going to show 50 basis points of positive spread. You're going to earn more credits than you're paying in interest. And that looks great, but that's not how it works in real life. The illustration is going to show positive results every single year, but and I've done videos on this where it shows only 2 negative years in a row in retirement when you're 75 to 80, 2 years in a row, your whole policy blows up. I don't know about you. I've got my wife's grandfather is 86. I just think about him and it's like where he's in life right now. And if he were relying on this right now in the last 2 years when the market's been negative and then kind of flat, like this would have blown up on him. And I think about like, wow, where would our life be? Where would his life be if he was relying on this for income and we had to support him and like all these things that were going on? It's crazy, man. So there's that. All right, last point, then we're gonna roll. The last point he said is, IULs are great because they're gonna accumulate, maybe not as well as the market, but they're gonna accumulate. It's not how much money you have, it's the income that you can get from that money, right? So use the analogy, if you get to $1 million in a 401k, well, that $1 million isn't yours, you gotta pay taxes on it. It's a true statement, right? So if you take $100,000 a year, you're gonna have to pay $30,000 in taxes, so it's only $70,000. And he's like, with IUL, we could take $80,000 on $1 million tax-free, there's less risk, and all these things. I got news for you. You cannot take a guaranteed 8%, and he used the word guaranteed, didn't he? Yeah. Guaranteed 8% out of an IUL every single year in retirement. He said that. Like, I don't know how he gets away with this, guys, because he's not licensed. Like, if you were licensed and said that crap, you would lose your license. You would be sanctioned, you'd be slapped, it'd be an E&O nightmare, right? Like, but he's not licensed. I don't know, that's the only thing I could think about how he gets away with it. Yet, whatever, people seem to believe him and take him. I think people just haven't Googled him. Google Doug Andrew lawsuit. We need to get that rolling, get that train rolling. But he says that you can take an 8% distribution. What are my notes here? So basically he's showing 8% because it's showing the 50 basis points of positive arbitrage, the positive spread that I was talking about. So on the illustration, it works, but that's not how it works in real life, right? And here's, once again, let's get out of the numbers. Let's even say the illustration, whatever, doesn't matter. Let's use common sense. Every company that sells an IUL also sells an index annuity. If you go to the correlating index annuity, utilizing the same indexing strategy, that index annuity is not going to be able to guarantee you, even on the annuity with no insurance charges, no expenses, no nothing. It's an income designed product using the same index. They're not going to guarantee you 8%. Why? Because it can't happen. If this leads me to the final point, is like, all these illustrations are run between 6 and 7% typically, most of them. A couple of them are like 5.6 to 5.8, but most of them are 6 to 7%. If the insurance company, and this is during a time when the insurance company general fund was only earning 4 to 4.5%. So in a time when the insurance company can only earn 4 to 4.5% in their general fund, in what world do you think they're gonna be able to get you 7% predictably, safely, just because the people show you the backlogging of and back testing of the S&P 500 or whatever engineered index it is? It doesn't make it doesn't work that way. The performance of the index actually has very little to do with the performance of your IUL. That's the part that I think most people don't understand. And I've got a lot of videos that go into the details on why that is the case. But these are things that people need to know. These are 5 points. Just to kind of recap, the first point was kind of just a thing where I'm just irritated that Doug likes to play victim and act like, oh, why are people attacking me all the time? People shouldn't attack people. They should just focus on what they do. It's like, dude, you built your business attacking and tearing down whole life, trying to position IUL as a superior product based on lies. So you can't cry about it, crybaby, when people come at you calling you out on your BS lies, that you used to tear down in the first place. So it's the most hypocritical statement I think I've ever heard in my life. And to watch him on stage almost made me vomit in the second row. So there was that. Talking about IUL, banks using IUL, that would be point number 2. Banks have used whole life insurance since 1913. IUL didn't even exist when banks started utilizing it. And I promise you, if banks were going to be utilizing IUL, banks would be giving you cash value lines of credit with 100% access to your money like they do for whole life. Think about, just use common sense. If banks know what's going on. If IUL was so good, they'd give you 100% leverage of your money if it were that safe, guys. They're not stupid. Think like a bank, right? So that's number 2. Number 3, he says the using a level death benefit reduces the net amount at risk. So he's saying fund it with an increasing, but move it to a level when you hit the phase where you're not funding it, and that's going to solve all the problems. That's BS. I have beat that in many videos. I've shown the mathematical facts why that is a lie. Number, I guess 5. That was number 3. Oh yeah, no. The other point was he claims that he's going to double your money in 7.5 years in an IUL. That's just, I don't even know how. That's just a freaking outright lie. There's half truths and then there's lies. That's a lie. Point 4, IUL can create predictable 8% distribution. I guess that would be point 5. There's no way that's going to happen, y'all, at all. So, all right, this was fun.
Yeah.
This is way more productive than sitting through that meeting.
We're not even done yet.
So guys, this is not going to be the end of it. I'm going in. We're going back in. I'm staying here through tomorrow. We're going to be watching more videos. I'm going to watching more content, watching more speeches. I'm going to try to interview some people here. Once again, I'm trying to be objective. I have been more impressed with the leaders here, and I say that with a very cautious statement of. I don't know them. That is not an endorsement for them. That is not me saying that I trust them or believe in them or anything of that nature. Just the fact that they're willing to allow me to be here is, pretty bold, quite frankly. But the fact that they're allowing me to be here, I gotta honor that a little bit. I'm just trying to honor that, and that's why I'm not using anybody's names. I'm trying to be full integrity. We slipped out into a side room so nobody would even see us making this because I didn't want to draw attention to it. But yeah, I will be doing more content on this. Hopefully, I think we're going to come live again tomorrow, which I normally would never do on a Sunday. It's family day, but I'm traveling, so we're going to come live tomorrow as well. But you got anything else before we roll?
No, man. Stay tuned. We got some more exciting stuff coming.
All right, guys. Have a blessed, inspirational day. We will talk to you all soon. Pray for me. See ya.